Hey folks, welcome to the webinar. We're just going to wait another 30 seconds, maybe a minute, for anyone else to join. So if you're in the lobby, if you've made it in, just hold on a few seconds. But thanks for joining us. What do you think, Adelaine? We ready to go?
Yeah, sure. I think, people will be joining in a few minutes, but we can certainly start.
All right, well, we'll take it slow here in the beginning. Thanks for joining us. We are now beginning the Managed Connectivity Trends in Multifamily Units webinar. And we have an esteemed guest here with us, and we have three actually panelists. We're going to go through them one by one and introduce them. First, let me tell you about myself. My name is Brad Randall. I'm the editor of bbcmag.com. We're the digital brand of the Broadband Community Summit, which happens annually in Houston, scheduled for 2025 in downtown Houston. We used to be in the Woodlands, which is a little bit outside of the city, but we'll be in the George R. Brown Convention Center next June. And we also have an event coming up in California in October, Broadband Communities Summit West. It's the newest addition to the Broadband Community Summit portfolio. To be in San Diego at the San Diego Convention Center from October 30th to 31st. We discuss multifamily trends and anything else happening in the realm of connectivity. And admittedly, we'll have a focus on the Western states for the San Diego event. But you can learn more about our event and follow our coverage by going to bbcmag.com, bbcmag.com/summit if you want to learn more about Broadband Community Summit. So with that said, we will go into our introductions here. First, we're going to go to Daniel Myers. He's the founder and president of Dojo Networks, and Dan has been involved in networking and technology for over 40 years. He first started his ISP in 1995 and has been providing internet to the MDU community since 2000. Over 24 years now. That's a long time, Dan. In those 24 years, the service being provided has changed and evolved, but Dan has managed to continually upgrade and keep the properties relevant with the highest level of service and support. He's an innovator and a thought leader in the MDU space with 100% retention of every property ever served. He is now providing service nationwide, serving some of the largest owners and operators, but still also working with individual owners. Does that get it right, Dan?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Lots of fun every day. Solving problems.
All right. Well, welcome aboard. And now we're going to go to Bernard. He's the founder and CEO of Net Experience. And Bernard, can you help me pronounce your last name?
Bernard Herskovich.
Bernard Herskovich. He's the founder and CEO of Net Experience, a company that provides the industry's first end-to-end software platform to control, manage, and automate disaggregated Wi-Fi networks compatible with Telecom Infra Project's open Wi-Fi architecture. Bernard has started and led as CEO of several companies in the Wi-Fi industry, including Bell Air Networks and Coda Cloud, and held executive positions in various companies such as Ericsson, BreezeCom, and Newbridge Networks. Bernard authored several patents in the wireless space. He has an MBA from the University of Ottawa and a Master of Applied Science from the University of Toronto. So welcome, Bernard.
Thank you.
And our last panelist here will go to Teng Tai Hao. Is that correct? Did I pronounce that correctly? Teng Tai Shu? Teng Tai Shu. Yeah, I Googled it and I had it read the name aloud for me and I still got it wrong. Teng Tai Shu is the vice president of Edgecore Networks, a provider of innovative networking solutions for enterprises, data centers, and telecommunications. Edgecore delivers network solutions through channel partners worldwide that keep information moving and connections for strong SMB, enterprise, data center, and service provider customers. So welcome, Tang Tai.
Thank you.
And now I'll hand it over to Adlane. He's from Maravedis, and he's going to kind of set the groundwork for what we're going to be discussing today. So Adlane, over to you.
Thank you, Brad, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today. It's my pleasure to set the stage here for this panel and provide some key trends that we see in the industry. Before I do so, just a few housekeeping items. We always get the question, is the event recorded? Of course, it is. It will be available in the next 24 hours. Though this event will be mostly a panel discussion, I will provide the handouts of the slides today. In fact, you have a bunch of handouts available for download. These are brochures for some of the reports that we published, along with the slides that I'll be presenting today. Please feel free to submit your questions throughout the event. We want this to be an interactive session. Though we have questions for the panelists ourselves, we will prefer to answer questions from the audience. For those that are not familiar with us, quickly, boutique wireless infrastructure analyst here since 2002. Now, I do remember analyzing BreezeCon back in the day when I was working at Wireless Corporation, and so been through the early Wi-Fi days and the WiMAX days. So it's been quite the journey. Based in Miami, Florida, although we have partners in different parts of the country. So a lot of analysts out there. I think if we are to provide a differentiated value, I think it's our deep insights into network as a service, private LTE, Wi-Fi, and really the conversions between Wi-Fi and cellular. We work very closely with the Wireless Broadband Alliance. Every year we author the industry analyst report and look at the different trends around the conversions. So what we do is essentially provide syndicated market reports, like the ones I'll be showing today. We also engage very often in custom research and lead generation. I think the value add is really having an independent and trusted offering, as opposed to somebody that has a vested interest in a particular topic. You can learn more about our offering at maravedis-bwa.com. Today we have a gift for you guys. So some of the research I'll discuss today comes from different reports we have done on conventional rental, senior living, in which, for example, we dove into very particular segments of the multifamily. Multifamily is not a homogeneous segment. There are differences between, say, senior living versus affordable connectivity. We also did a report, an independent report on tip open Wi-Fi. So that combines the research around multifamily. So we have a super deal for you guys today. 4 prices for the price of 2, and an additional discount. You can use the discount here for the next 3 days. On top of that, we built a contact list database of the top 200 Wi-Fi MSPs in the US, which will include for free if you order in the next 3 days. So this is my sales pitch. Now let's dive into what are the benefits of managed connectivity. Why are we here today? Why is this important? That is obviously benefits for different stakeholders. Residents today expect great connectivity at all times. And I think that there's a broken old traditional model where you come in and you call your cable operators and wait for 3 days. And sometimes there's a lot of friction there. Today, residents expect when they come in, when they check in their units to, have Wi-Fi available just like they have water and electricity and other utilities. And that's a very powerful driver, as we'll see in the next slides. Why do property owners care? Why is it important to them? Obviously, property owners want to increase retention, customer satisfaction, and at the bottom and at the end of the process, it impacts their net operating income. So having satisfied residents improves their bottom lines. And increasingly, as we'll see in the next slide, property owners do care about connectivity as part of both improving their residents' satisfaction, but also increasingly to improve the operational efficiency of their properties. And last but not least, CSPs, communication service providers, which includes managed service providers. But that the benefit is, instead of having to compete and share access to a particular property, they can enjoy 100% penetration, longer term deals in exchange for better service and more affordable rates. I know the FCC is trying to ban bulk billing and providing an opt-out ability for residents, that this may have some intended consequences. But the business case for CSP is very clear. And I think we believe this is a trend that's just going to continue and accelerate. So this is my last slide, and the one I'll spend most of the time on. So in 2024, we saw a slowdown in permitting activity because of the increase in interest rates. But this hasn't translated in the slowdown in units hitting the market. Rather, actually the multifamily projects getting completed and the number of units currently under construction is at an all-time high, approximately 1 million, according to the National Association of Home Builders. So a lot of units means more opportunities to provide managed connectivity. Now, the fundamental demographic trend here is that there's a generational shift. According to a survey by Parcel Pending, 90% of millennials are renters. And their generation represents 40% of the entire housing market. And home technology is at the center of these generations' life. The COVID pandemic has just accelerated the work from home, the hybrid working. So essentially today, residents live in smaller units with bigger amenities. And those amenities require good connectivity. Areas such as the pool, common areas, the gym, the lobby, all of these need the connectivity foundation to enable a number of services. On the other side of the spectrum, actually, the seniors are increasingly moving to multifamily units, and their habits are also changing. They're switching from cable TV to increasingly streaming, requiring common applications to engagement in the community. All of this requires great connectivity. Another interesting driver is, of course, those residents, they have more devices. In fact, looking at something like 20 connected devices, and most of those devices require good Wi-Fi. So we're talking here about smart home applications, smart lighting, thermostat, door locks, what have you. So the residents have more devices, they have more expectations when it comes to connectivity. For consumers, internet equals Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi equals internet. And they don't really dive into the technology aspects of it. All they expect is that it's working for the streaming, gaming, and essentially their tolerance for poor quality experience is at a minimum. So to them, Wi-Fi is a necessity. Another important trend we see is that is the growing presence of institutional investors, the REITs. These investors have more appetite for adopting new technologies because they want to really improve the bottom line, and that comes through improved operational efficiency. So the large corporate property owners are more likely to have professionally connected properties that will increase their efficiency and reduce costs. And that's an important driver. On the technology side, network as a service, stands for NAS, is when hardware and software services, management, and licensing components are consumed as a subscription model, as a service. The NAS model is driven by the fact that enterprises are unable to keep up with the innovations. In a context where there's a shortage of skilled labor, there is increased security threats, there's a shortage of equipment, as we saw in the supply chain issues during COVID. The replacement cycle of the technology is also getting smaller and smaller. So that puts a lot of financial pressures on the property owners to move away from the traditional CapEx model. As we'll see today, innovations also include tip-open Wi-Fi, which is a disaggregated hardware and enables those properties to actually mismatch different vendors and lower their cost. Last but not least, government funding. We've done a report about affordable housing connectivity. There are more than 100 government-led broadband expansion efforts, which are currently administered by 15 different agencies. It's quite a bit overlaps in the efficiencies. However, funding has some positive impact on bringing connectivity to rural areas as well as underserved multifamilies in urban areas. And that's all for me. So I'll stop sharing my screen here, and we can start the panel.
Well, thank you. That was very comprehensive, and let's dive into it. And we'll start off kind of at 35,000 feet looking down. So we'll go to Bernard here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Open Wi-Fi is?
Yes. So hi everyone. Open Wi-Fi, it's an initiative which triggered an architecture for Wi-Fi and switches. It's based on open source, and it's been led since 2019 by an ecosystem called Telecom Infra Project. What's interesting is Open Wi-Fi was an initiative of the buyer community who kind of like banded together and created this initiative. It was not an initiative of technology providers like ourselves or Edgecore. So the buyer community got together and they say they wanted something a little different. So they wanted the key they wanted to break what they call the vendor lock. So they didn't want to be stuck with the same technology partner, whether they liked it or not, for long term. They wanted to have the ability to pick and choose during projects and in between projects. And because of that, the technical feature of Open Wi-Fi, which is essential, it's called disaggregation. And that's something which means you can get, if you're like a service provider like Dan represents, you can have a platform, a technology platform, which is compatible with multiple hardware choices from various vendors. It's been very successful. Well, it's been going at it since 2019. Right now, last time I checked, there were 66 different access point models which were certified on Open Wi-Fi. And the switch initiative started a little bit later, a few years later. But there are still 10 different switches, which are switch models, which are certified in open Wi-Fi. And those are the ones which have been certified already. The certification process goes on all the time, and it's quite fast. So right now, in progress, there are additional 7 Wi-Fi 7 access point models and another 10 switch models. So we're not so far from getting to a number of, let's say, 100 different AP models. And the switches started a bit later, but they are on a very, very steep curve. So from that metric, it's been very successful.
And Dan, can we discuss the difference between bulk and managed Wi-Fi? I mean, from what I understand as kind of a layman, bulk retail Wi-Fi will come into a MDU and they'll provide their service. But if you have 100 units, you have 100 routers, and those are all competing. And it takes AI and machine learning to kind of sift through that. And then from what I understand also in open,
I think we lost your audio. We lost your
We
audio.
lost your audio. Can't hear you now. We can't hear you.
Brad, we lost your audio.
we're going to go back to basics here. So from what I understand, open Wi-Fi, the property owner owns the assets there in the building. Is that correct? Is that kind of a good overview?
It probably depends on the provider and how they're looking at it. I mean, first, you're right. So whether it be bulk Wi-Fi or a retail play in a building, you've got all of these access points that aren't coordinated, right? So you're creating lots of Wi-Fi interference. The router from each apartment is conflicting with every other apartment. I've been in buildings that have gig internet, and you get 20 or 30 megabits and your devices disconnect all the time. And that was why, having been in ISP as long as we have, we've been deploying Wi-Fi since 2004. We were looking for a solution to manage the RF spectrum. And I had been a WISP prior to that, where that's exactly what we were doing on towers. We were managing the RF spectrum so that we could maximize the delivery to our customers. So managed Wi-Fi gives you the best possible experience in an apartment building where you have a very dense environment, because these apartments are 600 to 800 square feet. And if you're a router that's designed to serve 2,000 square feet, it's bleeding in all those other apartments and vice versa. So managed Wi-Fi, when properly run, maximizes the RF spectrum and the spectral efficiency, eliminating interference, which causes slow speeds and disconnects. And also, it allows residents, when managed Wi-Fi, it's misappropriated by lots of people in the industry. But managed Wi-Fi, when done properly, allows residents to roam anywhere on property in their own secure, private, encrypted network. You have property-wide coverage, so you can connect devices to help better support the property, such as IoT, asset protection technology, leak detection, thermostat locks, etc. And again, if operated by a good operator, you also improve cellular coverage across the property, which is a big bonus. So you can run something called Passpoint that improves cellular coverage where you don't have cellular coverage. And residents, if they don't have good internet and don't have good cell phones, they move out. So it's retention. And you can also really deliver what we call a carrier class type of service to the residents with redundant bandwidth feed to the property, redundancy in how the network is built. So even if your access point would go down, you'll connect to the next best access point, still have service, just like in a cellular network. And you even have service when the power goes out, right? Because everything's running on managed power and things like that. So residents need their internet and touch their internet more than any other utility or amenity in their apartment, and they use it 24 hours a day, nonstop. So many hardware vendors and service providers, like I said, try and blur the line here. I've had hardware vendors such as KLX and Eero tell me their product's managed Wi-Fi, but it's not. And there's many others that do the same thing. So we have hardware vendors telling service providers they have a managed Wi-Fi product, and then we have service providers telling their customers, their bulk product's as good as managed Wi-Fi. It isn't.
Well, and so Bernard, you kind of set up what open Wi-Fi is. Can you talk about Net Experience's role in open Wi-Fi? What do you guys do in that field?
Yeah, But maybe before that, just echoing a little bit Dan's experience in managed Wi-Fi. It's a distinction between having, well, each residence or apartment kind of like an isolated network versus have something for the whole building, which has been done in the enterprise context for many, many years, and it's been very well coordinated. And one more point I would make, another benefit would be the benefit of analytics. When Dan or companies like Dojo are able to go with a complete solution, which is for the whole venue, for the whole property, they can get visibility and provide insights to their customers, enabling those customers to better target their services towards their customers. Now, going to who we are and what are we doing here. As you mentioned in the intro, I've been in Wi-Fi for long, and I thought it was too long. I started, I think Arlan was saying, Briscom, I started when it was 1 megabit per second, and that was considered quite high speed. So I've been going through cycles and cycles and cycles of innovation. And every time it was, okay, let's double the speed, or okay, let's put a little bit more security, or let's put a little bit more spectrum. So it became like kind of like a technology curve, which was very, very powerful, but it was quite predictable. And then in 2019, when me and the other team members were kind of sick and tired of Wi-Fi, and we were ready to do a fintech company, so we were contacted by Telecom Infra Project, which at that time was driven quite a bit by Facebook. So they said, we have an idea. We want to talk to you. Okay. So they presented this idea of disaggregation and the ability to have software compatible with multiple hardware. And as we were thinking more and more about it, it became quite innovative and different, not necessarily only a little bit more speed, a little bit more security and so on, which has been the normal trajectory. So we thought that would be disruptive, and we set up ourselves to be kind of like the day one software company, if you like, for open Wi-Fi. And we've been going at it. By the way, Edgecore and Tank Tiger, we call him TT. TT and the company Edgecore have been also a day one company and partner in open Wi-Fi. And now we have a full commercial platform from a software perspective, which is compatible with access point and switches. And all of those would be based on the open Wi-Fi architecture for access points and switches. So we interoperate with all the hardware vendors in the ecosystem. Of course, Edgecore is a premier partner, and we're doing a lot of projects with them. Some of them are gigantic. And we're also been fortunate to be able to work with many of the MSPs, or maybe almost all of the MSPs, which are active in open Wi-Fi. We're blessed to work with Dan and kind of like companies, visionaries like his, Dojo, and others. And when we go to a customer, we support both the hardware and software, because most of the time the questions are perhaps more on the software side. And maybe to kind of wrap it up, I think we are probably involved in the majority of the open Wi-Fi projects, including some national providers in Asia and many customers domestically in US.
Well, and we'll go to TT now. Thanks, hi. So can you tell us a little bit about Edgecore's role in all this?
Yes. Like Bernard said, we are also contacted by TIP every day to join the open Wi-Fi. Started as the Wi-Fi AP supplier. So pretty soon we understand in order to help this community become successful, we need to do kind of like a pre-integration at the hardware level. So we provided we call tip skill AP in very early stage to help the community so it can be easier get integrated with the open Wi-Fi solution. So since then, we provide a very complete solution for both Wi-Fi and the switch. And the Wi-Fi, like a deploy in different vertical, need different form factor. So we build like an indoor, outdoor, build antenna, external antenna, wall play, and all our AP are built with Bluetooth and DP interfaces, so can be integrated with some of smartphone IoT devices. Starting this year, we also added Wi-Fi Halo into our AP, so we can also integrate with longer range IoT devices such as IP camera or other like automation control device in the farmhouse or range. So for switch side, as Bernard mentioned, even the project started late after the open Wi-Fi, we be able to convert a range of Edgecore switch into we call open lane switch compatible devices. And like I always sometimes joke to Bernard, Edgecore have more switch than Wi-Fi. So actually we very quickly we come up with like about like a 20 model switch that support open lane switch. Then we start to see more like a deploy in the field. They are combining Wi-Fi and switch together. So we are great to join this open community. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tang. I'm going to switch it over to Dan here and ask why Dojo decided to deploy open Wi-Fi. You know, now we have a pretty good understanding of what it is. So why did you go this direction?
Well, so it's important for us to understand the market, right? So, and also not be tied to a sole vendor. This has to do with supply chain, pricing, and not, like you said, being locked that all of a sudden there's a problem and you're stuck. So we have a great partner that we've been deploying with for years, and that's Ruckus, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But we're looking at and testing in our lab both TP-Link Omada and Cambium as well. We want to know, what the marketplace is, and we need to understand the price, performance, capabilities, and total cost of ownership over time. Truck rolls are expensive. Equipment failures are expensive. So we need experience with what's going on. So I am concerned about supply chain once again. There's $200 billion of investment just coming out of the government, including federal and state programs into the internet marketplace in the next 24 months, and how that's going to impact everything from hardware, parts, and labor. And so having the ability to deploy and support multiple different vendors is important to us. Today, like I mentioned, 99.9% of our markets, we run Ruckus. And we have their cloud controller deeply integrated with our industry-leading Elemento platform. And that's something that we built to be able to deploy what we call our managed Wi-Fi Plus product. Before deploying Ruckus, again, I've been doing this for much longer. I was offering Ethernet where it's bring your own router, or we rented a router that phoned home using TR69. But we did a lot of testing. And we integrated Ruckus, like I said, deeply into our systems to make sure that it would do what we needed. Ruckus is the gold standard when it comes to MDU managed Wi-Fi, and they basically created the industry and are ahead of the curve on that. Open Wi-Fi, has come out of the box, and we've been working with Edgecore and their switches, and I'll talk about that. And we've been talking about in that experience about the things that we needed to make it successful, and they've been very responsive. So I can say that. But today, we're testing at a small scale, similar to the way we did when we deployed Ruckus, to find out what the pros and cons are and what features are missing that we need from such as analytics and things like that. And we bring them up and they get built, which is great. But like I said, the total cost of ownership over time, which includes equipment failures, truck rolls, is very important. Solving and being able to solve customer issues and problems very rapidly is important, because today, with the systems we've deployed, we answer a customer's call in less than 15 seconds on average, and the agent that answers that call solves that customer's issue in under 10 minutes. So any hardware that we deploy and integrate into our system and platform has to make sure that we continue to meet those KPIs. And we can only do that because of the features that we've built in Elemento that give our level 1 agents the ability to solve at scale any of those common issues and things that happen. So we don't have to escalate them to an engineer. They're able to solve it on that first call with the tools because of those deep integrations. So I think we've had very low equipment failure rate. And when equipment fails, it's been very easy to get a credit from the hardware manufacturer for that. So we just need to make sure that all those bits and pieces of running our business are the same. And then, like I said, we'll be able to support. And that's why we looked at open Wi-Fi. The way I like to, people say, well, and ask me about it, Ruckus is like Apple, right? They build the hardware, they build the software, you've got one throat to choke, they're all there. With open Wi-Fi, it's a little bit more like Android. You have multiple, cloud software providers. Obviously, we're using that experience. And then from the hardware side, we've got a lot of experience with Edgecore on the switching side. We're just getting experience with the Wi-Fi access points.
So, you go into an MDU, you put open Wi-Fi. I know you're still in a trial period with it, but who owns the equipment? Like, how does that work?
So our model has always been that the property owner owns everything. We build it, so we build everything we design it, engineer it, build it, and then operate it, but they own it. And if they're not happy with Dojo, they can bring another operator in, right? So we've got SLAs, we've got guarantees, we're going to guarantee uptime, white glove service and support. We handle all the monitoring, all the support, all the customer support 24/7. We do offer financing over 5, 7, or 10 years. So if they just want it built into their monthly rate, that's fine. Or they can pay it up front and have a lower monthly rate. Some people are buy and hold, some people are short-term hold. So whatever makes sense for the property owner, we kind of have a financial model, mix and match, whatever makes sense. We're going to do that so that at the end of the day, they have best of breed network because we build it right, so we can operate it easily and make sure it works.
So I'll go to Adlane here. We've heard, quite a bit here in the past few minutes. What do you think about the overall potential for open Wi-Fi? And, two parts to that question. What segments of the industry, obviously we know MDUs are a main applicant for that, but what segments of the industry would be most promising for open Wi-Fi? And you can tie it into geographical regions as well, if you'd like.
Yeah. So great question. So in our market report, what we looked at is, what are, from a global perspective and across segments, which are the potential early adopters, I would say, of open Wi-Fi. And I think that on the multifamily side of things, affordable housing is a natural candidate. I would say that those segments that are cost sensitive to the CapEx will probably be more inclined to going with open Wi-Fi. But having said that, as Daniel indicated, it's not just about cost. It's also about flexibility in terms of vendor's choice. But I'll say affordable housing is one. But it's a good candidate for any subsegment of the multifamily. Though I would say maybe the high-end apartment building would probably not look at it right away, but I wouldn't discard it will do in the long term. In terms of other segments, I'll say independent hospitality chains, are very likely to adopt it. The Marriott of this world, probably not yet. They have their own requirements. They're, to get approved as a vendor, it takes years, and it's a very complex process there. Outside the U.S., internationally, obviously, Bernard mentioned some Asian countries which have been more aggressive in adopting the technologies. Think of Malaysia, but I think it has, India and other countries, developing countries. We can see massive volumes in those countries across segments. Could be SMB, could be multifamily, could be hospitality. Those are the top 3 segments.
And Tang, can you share some kind of examples of maybe some interesting open Wi-Fi deployments in different sectors? I mean, you're knee deep in this. Just give us some examples of what that looks like in different sectors.
Okay. Recently, TIP published a press release about like for Open Wi-Fi deployment and the past 100K milestone. In there, we can see like a 34 example, including like MDU, hospitality, and student housing. That's most popular one, and also public space like airport, like a stadium, and also business like SMB and enterprise. And I look at those them, most of them actually using Edgecore device and cooperate with our partner like Neighbors or other cloud controller. Then for some of them, they also have press release. For example, Overview recently announced they deploy in an apartment building in Texas. And S4 has deployed for student housing in UK. And also, I think single digit deployed in Donald McDonald Charity House in North Carolina. Then also our partner in India, they also providing the service to the small business. And I also see an example from another partner in India, they deploy for the airport. So we start to see Open Wi-Fi deployment, not just limit to MDU, hospitality, student housing, also gradually moving to other space for deployment.
Bernard, do you have anything to add to that in terms of, who's deploying it now and what you're seeing from your side of things?
No, in general, it's the same. If you kind of step back a little bit, you'll see a lot of the deployments being done by service providers which have a certain level of scale. They are in verticals where the total cost of ownership is very important. And that means they cannot buy always kind of the most expensive, but also it needs to work well in a congested environment, as was said before. So it needs to support, controller functions and kind of like at scale management functions and so on, but do so in a way which is cost effective, and then maybe lingering from the COVID times and who knows in the future, the kind of service providers which are concerned about potential supply chain issues for a variety of reasons. Like in Open Wi-Fi, you can have the same building, and in the same building, you can have one room with one product, and the next room is a completely different product. And the controller would be able to deal with it as being kind of like the same. So that creates a lot of flexibility. But the other thing, which is sometimes it's overlooked in Open Wi-Fi, it allows hardware companies to innovate and stand up on their feet, because normally the way the industry has been operating, the hardware companies, they have to sell to a large OEM based on specifications and so on. Now, all of a sudden, you have companies like Edgecore, which are going and creating their own capabilities with their own features that they think they are important. So there is a better opportunity for them to compete and shine, which is one of the, I don't know if it was an intended kind of reason for Open Wi-Fi, but for sure it's happening right now. And I think that benefited Edgecore quite a bit.
I mean, so it's overall pretty healthy for the ecosystem of the industry. And
yes, yeah. And when STT was saying, like, we've seen pull and kind of like rollouts, like in very, very large service providers. Some of them are national service providers in India, and if you take the kind of the scale of that country, obviously it's humongous compared to even United States. But what is, like, why, think about like why India? Well, India, can they afford to pay very high prices? Probably the answer is no. But do they have density and they have requirements for it to work well in the days when, video is over Wi-Fi and there is so much kind of Wi-Fi usage that the controller becomes essential? So those are the drivers, but when national providers get involved, they don't go on a thin vertical. When a national provider gets involved, they would certify and get comfortable with the solution and then try to apply it to multiple verticals. So you can have, let's say over here, focused MSPs, which would be, let's say, student housing or MDU. When you go into like a national provider, they'll go, oh, okay, so I can go in with hotels, I can go into MDUs, I can go into SMBs, I can go into public spaces. And I think the next one, which is going to come, is education market.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a lot. And so this obviously has tremendous potential. Let's go back to MDUs for a second. You know, a main segment of the US housing market and North America as well. Can you talk about how it meets some of the requirements that those MDUs property owners would be looking for, how open Wi-Fi kind of meshes with their desires?
Well, it's an ideal solution for managed Wi-Fi, the way Dan was defining managed Wi-Fi, but it's not by accident. At the very beginning of the project in 2020, we were thinking like, what would be the best way to aim open Wi-Fi, let's say, at least initially. And MDU, student housing, those kind of verticals became a focus of our project. So we went and talked to a large number of service providers and kind of like ecosystem partners in that space. And we picked up the requirements. What does an ideal solution for managed Wi-Fi means? Well, it needs to work really well in a congested environment. And each apartment may have kind of like video traffic and multiplicity of devices and so on. Probably it's a higher density of devices and usage per square foot than you have in the enterprise. And so it requires a solution which is at least an enterprise grade from a performance perspective. Cost, we always were very, very careful to make sure that the cost is kept in check. And cost has two aspects. One is the initial cost, how much needs to be paid initially for whatever is being delivered. But the other one is the ongoing operating cost, which if we're not careful can become like a boat anchor. So we try to optimize both. The other thing which is really, really important in the MDU space and Open Wi-Fi delivers is, well, there is no IT on site. So every time there is a problem, either needs to be automatically fixed remotely, or it's a very expensive proposition. A truck roll is expensive. You need to have people with kind of technicians in all the cities where you operate and so on. So having the telemetry, having the automation, having the algorithm, having the smarts in the equipment has been a focus of the project and in our product. And that's create kind of like another pillar of benefit for open Wi-Fi in the MDU space. So because of that, it's been embraced by a large number of service providers in the MDU space. Dan and Dojo are more at the beginning of the journey. It seems that it's going to be a very steep positive curve, but there are others which deploys tens and tens of thousands of access points and switches in the same vertical. And they told us their number of support calls got reduced by 30% when they moved to open Wi-Fi. So far, so good.
And as Dan kind of elaborated earlier, you know, they'll offer financing for this. It's the property owner who pays for the capital expense here. And we're running short on time, so we're going to kind of go a little quicker. We're going to have time for questions at the end, but we'll go to Tang. You know, can you describe some concerns property owners might have about open Wi-Fi? What would hold someone back from deploying this?
Yeah, for me, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I think for the customer, they used to deploy incumbent vendor solution. They might have concern about OpenWiFi's readiness, compatibility, availability, and continuous support. So I think OpenWiFi as a community addresses this concern pretty well. First, they publish open source enterprise grade Wi-Fi source code and continue to provide feature enhancement on quarterly basis. They also have a commercially grade automated test system. Then they test all the vendors' hardware with OpenWiFi software, the quality and the compatibility. And recently, we are working with them to build adding the switch into the test setup. So it will become like a complete system. Also, through the like a 40-50 deployment case recently published by TIP, it had proved like the partner in this community actually can deliver the solution the customer like Dojo would want to see. And the Edgecore certainly will continue to provide very complete, high quality solution to this community.
Daniel, can you talk about how property owners use managed connectivity to kind of improve their overall efficiency and potentially their bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, so they're definitely connected for, using iPads for their staff or Wi-Fi and VoIP connected phones, running their camera systems across our networks, putting, various IoT applications on the network, thermostats or leak detection or any of those types of things that are protecting their very expensive asset. I don't know if you wanted me to cover about whether property owners care about, what type of technology they're deploying, or you wanted to.
I mean, we kind of have an idea that they don't, but if you'd like to elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, I mean, in many cases they don't, because it's like Wi-Fi as a service, right? It just needs to work. It's got to be frictionless. They don't want the residents complaining. They don't want the residents complaining to them. They want to make sure that they've got someone that can solve their problem. So yeah, I would say that they don't really care about, the property owners don't care. But a lot of times, I think as I started to say in the beginning, they get sold a bill of goods by some providers that are out there. So it's really important, and some of them are getting smart, right? So they're saying, hey, it's got to be this, it's got to be this. But at the end of the day, you've got to deliver on your SLAs or you're out. But it's expensive for them to kick somebody out. So they need to make that, they need to do their due diligence up front. They need a provider that's got past performance, right? Because there's a lot of companies that are rushing into this space, putting in managed Wi-Fi equipment, or maybe it's managed Wi-Fi equipment, and they haven't been around for 5 years. They haven't even been through a single contract. So it's really important, if you're a property owner and you're looking, like, do your due diligence, talk to references, find someone that's been through multiple contract renewal. Well, why do you use the company? How'd you select them? Those types of things. I think that's really important.
And do you want to deploy multiple vendors?
I would say we want to deploy the right vendors and the right partners. Ruckus has proven themselves to be a great partner for us, and we worked with them for over 10 years, and we don't intend to stop. With Edgecore, we've used them in our carrier network, which, that's like in our NOCs and things like that for a number of years, the white box routing, and they've been very stable from that standpoint. So we've just started looking at them and deploying them, but they've built the things that we need. NetExperience has built the pieces. Is everything there that we need yet? No, but we're asking them as we're finding it, and they're building it. So that's good. But so it's a little bit of trial and error, and it's getting it out there, it's putting it out there and seeing how it performs. There is some savings on the CapEx piece. On the OpEx piece, I think we're gonna have to see over time to see if there's a savings on that. But we need to understand the marketplace, and so we need to see, I guess.
And Tang, maybe in a minute's time, can you talk about, and if you have any questions, let us know. Can you talk about the open Wi-Fi solution that Edgecore provides?
Yes, Edgecore provides both the Wi-Fi and switch. For the Wi-Fi AP, our support Wi-Fi can basically support every kind of deployment in the switch. And To differentiate our solution from other vendor in the open Wi-Fi stage space, we focus very much on the quality, completeness, and service. So every our device is designed with a high MTBF at 500K hours. For the completeness, just like we have complete solution, we also have our solution certified with a major certificate, like FCC and CE, so ready to be imported to any country, most country. Also for the service, our partner can get our device from our global distribution channel and also IMS service. Also, we have a technical team to support our partner in integrating open Wi-Fi from device to cloud SDK side.
Brad, there's a question from the audience. Maybe you want to address, and I think Bernard can respond to that. What specifically attributed to the 30% reduction in trouble tickets downtown by deploying open Wi-Fi?
That's a good question. I think the essence of it is the way our controller works, which has been kind of refined, and it uses elements of AI into it. And it's able to coordinate the operation of the Wi-Fi system in a congested environment, because the end users, the beneficiaries of the technology, they are going to see trouble when the network is very congested. So that's the area where we put a lot of effort into the technology. And I believe that's at the root of the reduction. Our kind of ability to synchronize a spectrum and manage a very large number of access points in a very, from an RF perspective, polluted environment, and in the same time deliver the video traffic and all the other traffic to the end user's expectations. I think that's at the root of it.
Thank you. Maybe time for a last question, right, Brad?
Yes, and if we don't have any other questions for the audience, let's go to you, actually. We kind of just got a great overview of the technology, what it's capable of, who would deploy it. Can you tell us kind of what the addressable market for open Wi-Fi will look like in the next 5 years?
Yeah, you know what they say about projections. We tend to overestimate the short term and underestimate the long term. I would say, when I started this process of looking at open Wi-Fi, I was, kind of cautious about it. I always wear a skeptical hat about new technologies because I lived through the WiMAX years, and it was a very promising technology, and then it faded. I think in the case of open Wi-Fi, it's different, and I don't think it has the same challenges that, for example, Open RAN has, right? From a technology perspective, open Wi-Fi uses Open WRT, which is being deployed in millions of residential CPEs. For those that are familiar, Open WRT projects a Linux operating system targeting embedded devices. It's like a library of files. They use packages to suit any applications. It's kind of more for developers. From a business perspective, the difference with Open RAN is in Open RAN, Ericsson, Nokia, and the incumbents were really were on the driver's seat. They build their own versions of Open RAN, and the smaller vendors that kind of wanted to disrupt the market didn't have the cash flow to survive because deployments didn't occur at the same rate. One of the risks always associated with the technology is how quickly will early adopters deploy it, right? Because it has a direct impact on the ability for vendors with not such big deep pockets to survive and go through that phase of trials and proof of concept and development, right? So it has to create a virtuous circle where early adopters fund additional R&D. The difference also, so from a business perspective, the wireless LAN incumbents, Cisco, Ruckus, and Aruba and others are watching the developments, but they haven't come up with their own version of open Wi-Fi because they don't have it's contrary to their own interest, which is to lock in customers and sell as much platforms as they can, from APs to switches to controllers and etc. So it all going to depend on there are some interesting initial trials by tier one operators. I think that the mix of tier one operators in developed countries plus potentially larger deployments in developing countries like Malaysia, India, will set the course in the next year or two.
All right, well, I think that concludes today's panel. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Bernard, and thank you, Tang, for joining us. I think we got a lot out of it today.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, the audience, for attending. Great job. And again, this webinar was recorded and will be made available to you guys in the next 24 hours. This ends the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.